So we understand that intersectional theory has a hatred of masculinity. That much is clear. But in another very real way, it despises femininity too. It's anti-men, but it's anti-women as well. As you can see here, the theory proposes that men are born advantaged with power and women are inherently disadvantaged with weakness. In order to achieve equality then, men must be dragged down from their supposed lofty perch, and that means they must be disempowered, which is where all the men-hating men or trash kill-all-men rhetoric comes from. It's an attempt to tear men down. But it also says to women, as we tear men down, we need to raise you up. As they become disempowered, you need to become empowered. That's how we'll achieve the necessary equilibrium. And how do you become empowered? How do we raise you up? Well, by shedding the inherent weakness of your femininity, that which puts you at such a disadvantage. And instead, you need to become more like men. If you want equality with men, you need to become like men. That's the message that intersectional theory sends. Which leads to this really strange paradox where whenever men display typically masculine traits such as strength, stoicism, and competence, that's derided by the woke as being toxic. But whenever women display those exact same masculine traits, that's celebrated as being empowered. Somewhere where we see this message very clearly is in the movies that have been coming out of Hollywood over recent years. And at this point, I'm going to pass the ball to a channel that specializes in movie criticism, one called Baggage Claim, and she's going to expand on this concept.
Hollywood clearly does not understand women. The industry has been trying really hard to pander to us, co-opting franchises and releasing movies and TV shows, all with female heroes front and center, while the men quiver, grovel, and cower in the background. But it's not working. Each of these releases has been met by subpar box office numbers and fast dwindling viewership. And to make matters worse, once priceless IPs like Disney, Star Wars, and the MCU are now eliciting apathetic yawns from their audience at best and scorn at their worst. But even with these disastrous results, Hollywood has no plans to change their women equals good and men equals bad approach to story writing. In fact, they're willing to go down with this rapidly sinking ship rather than accept the alternative. More female representation on screen really isn't a bad thing, but from the common character traits of the recent female heroes, one thing is very clear. The writers and creators don't like women. Feminine traits like empathy, patience, compassion, and gentleness are either never showcased nor valued, but almost every character is stoic, arrogant, impatient, and immensely powerful, either physically or supernaturally, or both. All traits that are typically considered masculine. The female heroes are rarely, if ever, wrong, and their hero's journey requires neither growth nor any improvement in order for them to be triumphant. Usually, if they are lacking anything, it's a slight lack of self-belief, no doubt sowed in them by a male-run society. So the female hero has no feminine traits and doesn't need to undergo the hero's journey. Her only struggle really is dealing with the machismo and utter incompetence of whatever unfortunate male who happens to be in her story. The men, on the other hand, are bumbling, fumbling idiots who are often figuratively or literally kicked in the They are often shown as emotional, sentimental, and caring. But again, these traits are played for laughs, rather than values meant to balance out the aggressive female heroes. So the morals of these stories are simple. Men are bad. And since society has been built by men, society also is bad. Women are perfect, except for all the traits that make them feminine. Those should be rejected and can be embodied by men, but women have to be like men. But men are not allowed to be like men. Also, remember how men are bad, but male traits in women is great. If you're confused, don't worry. The writers and creators are confused too.
So masculinity in men is seen as toxic, but masculinity in women is seen as empowered. That's how messed up and confused we've become as a result of intersectionality. The media's telling women to shed their femininity because there's no value in it. It's weak. It's something to be despised and gotten rid of. And instead, there's an obsession with telling women to be powerful and stoic and masculine. In fact, the word power is almost the buzzword of the age when it comes to female advertising now.
Colouring our hair goes more than follicle deep. It lets our true colours shine from within. And that's powerful. Embrace the power of colour.
Avon, embrace your power.
Embracing power. Avon by my side.
That's the power of beautiful hair.
One day, we won't need this day. We won't need a day to celebrate how far we've come. We won't need a day to prove we're just as fast or strong or skilled.
The message to women is constantly be powerful, be stoic, you're just as fast and just as strong as men, and one day all the world will see that you can do everything they can do just as well or better than them. You can be just as masculine as men are, and you should try to be, because that's how you'll gain equality. But there are some major problems with this message, and the first one is that it's just not true that women are inherently lesser in the first place, or that femininity puts women at an immediate disadvantage from birth. This framework is flawed from the very start. In the previous episode, I said that God invented masculinity and he didn't design trash. Masculinity is good. Well, the same is true for femininity. God designed femininity and he didn't design trash. Femininity is good. It's God designed. It's not something to be despised or shed, and it doesn't make women lesser. Far from it. The Bible is clear that women are every bit as important as men. They are equal from birth. It says, there is no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. This verse means that both are created in God's image. Both are equally invited before the throne of grace. Both are equal heirs of God. The Bible acknowledges that men and women have different attributes, but declares neither masculinity or femininity is more important than the other. It says, but among the Lord's people, women are not independent of men, and men are not independent of women. In other words, we need both. We need what each side is bringing. We need each other. Femininity is not something to be shed. It's something to be embraced. It's something that's needed in this world. The world needs women. It needs femininity. It needs their natural attributes. And indeed, this is how both sexes flourish, when they each embrace their design, when they work with nature rather than against it. Women just don't make good men. The Nike advert said that one day everyone would recognize that women are just as fast and just as strong as men. That's never gonna happen. You may have seen this race a few years back. It's a mixed relay, and the female athlete got a massive head start on the rest of the field. Look at the difference in the speed and power though. In fact, even with that massive head start, she ended up outside the medal positions. And the converse is also true. Men don't make good women either. Men trying to be women just look silly, let's be honest. When men try to look like women, when they try to be feminine, they just look silly. But I think the main problem with women trying to shed their femininity is that the world then misses out on it. The world wants it, the world needs it, but women are encouraged to despise it and not to bring it to bear. And this really gets us to the heart of this video. In the previous episode, I said I wanted to unashamedly celebrate men. In this episode, I want to unashamedly celebrate women and say to women, we need your femininity. Your femininity is good. It's not a lesser thing. We love it. We need it in this world. The world needs who God designed you to be. So let's talk about it. What do women naturally bring? What do they do better than men? Well, women tend to be much more relational than men. Men tend to be much more interested in things, while women tend to be much more interested in people. That men are interested in things should be obvious. We saw in the previous episode that they're fixated on engines and electrical circuits and plumbing, and that's why they're always inventing and building things. But that women are much more interested in people should be equally obvious, because while a man's mind is typically preoccupied with how he's going to build that retaining wall in the backyard or the stats of his favorite sports team, a woman tends to be far more preoccupied with relationships, how her friend's date went last night. She wants to phone her for a catch-up to get the details, or even better, to meet in person over coffee. She's wondering if her other friend is doing okay in her marriage and how they're getting on with the new baby. She's planning a birthday party for Sarah and wondering when all the girls will be free to get together. Women are simply much more relational. They're better at establishing relationships, and they're better at facilitating relationships. Women tend to be the ones who remember the key dates like birthdays and anniversaries, and who then make arrangements for parties and cards and gifts so people feel valued. Men really struggle with this kind of thing, and so often they rely on women to do this kind of stuff for them. They kind of outsource this to their wives or girlfriends or whoever's in their family. And indeed, men who don't have women to create these connections for them and to facilitate these connections can begin to struggle with loneliness quite quickly. I refer to this observation by Sebastian Maniscalco and Jerry Seinfeld.
Let me tell you something. From afar, observing you throughout the years, you've become a lot more open to meeting people. And again, this is from afar, and I think it's from your wife.
There's no question about it.
So your wife kind of took you out of that. Is she the social one?
Yeah, she's a normal person. She likes things that anyone would like. Just being a human being.
Yeah.
I have none of that.
My wife calls me a cat. Like I'm always hiding underneath the couch, and I got to be coerced to come out.
Well, women do this for men in general. Women socialize men.
Yeah.
We're kind of beastly, you know, and we're just about work, survive, earn, survive, eat, survive.
Women socialize men. They often provide this link to community that men are not great at establishing themselves. Something that happens a lot in church life, and I'm sure you'll know this if you go to church, is that two women will tend to meet, and I've seen this a lot, and then they'll invite one another over for lunch, and then the husbands are kind of thrown together and they just have to make something of it. But in the end, it turns out to be for their benefit. The fact the wives got together, they then become friends through their wives. Something else, I'm just throwing out some anecdotal examples now, is I was planning a few days in Paris a few years ago. It's just an hour and a half's flight from here. It's very cheap to get there on the plane. So I just thought, I've never been my whole life and I should really go because it's quite close. And you kind of take these things for granted, I suppose, in Europe. So I decided I was going to go, and I messaged my female friend who used to live there because I thought she might have some tips. And she excitedly began setting up all these connections with her friends, saying I should meet these people for lunch and I'd get on with these other people over here. And she put us in touch over Instagram. And all I'd been thinking was, I just want to see the things. I want to see the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, Notre Dame things. I just want to know about the things. I'm into photography. And to me, the perfect trip was just wandering around with my camera, finding the architecture and the museums and the history. But to my female friend, the excitement was the people. That's what she began thinking of. It was the connections that could be made. So women are naturals with this in a way that men just aren't. Indeed, in 2019, it was reported that 1 in 5 men had no friends at all. And in 2021, another charity found that 1/3 of men had no friends at all. So this is an area where women really excel and men just kind of don't. The jobs that women naturally aim for tend to be people-focused as well, and they're much needed. 84% of nurses are women, 95% of child carers are women, 87% of nursery and primary teachers are women, 84% of care workers, 83% of physiotherapists, 81% of social workers, 80% of counsellors, even 73% of hairdressers and barbers. Wherever there's a profession that's focused on people, whether that be caring for them, nurturing them, beautifying them, teaching them, or mending their broken relationships, women will tend to be at the forefront of that. And we need those things. We need women doing the things that they love. The woke have this obsession with trying to force women into male-dominated industries. And the question I have is, why? If women don't want to be plumbing and laying sewage pipes, then why force it? I mean, if they want to and if they're capable, then sure. But the fact is that women mostly don't want to do those things. They have their own unique skills and interests, and we need them. We need nurses and carers and teachers. Another way of describing what women do is to say they bring forth life. Men may build the houses and infrastructure of a society and lay the roads and pipes and all that kind of thing, but it's women who take those places and turn them into homes and into communities. Men will build the box, but women make that box a cozy and warm place to be. Not only do women bring forth life in the form of babies, which is a unique gift within itself. Indeed, the name Eve, the woman from whom we all descend, that literally means life. That's what women do. They naturally infuse the places they inhabit with life, and they do it through childbearing and through this natural ability to build community with others, and then with their jobs that they seem naturally drawn to, such as nurses and carers and teachers. They nurture life, they teach life, they beautify life, they bring forth life. This isn't about trying to create a narrow definition of femininity and saying women have to conform to this particular image. That's not what this is about at all. This is not a message of prohibition. This is a message of freedom. A message of freedom from the lies of feminism, which teaches women that in order to gain equality with men, they have to become like men. It's simply not true, and it's a damaging message. Of course, the ways in which women express their femininity are as expansive and varied as the ways in which men express their masculinity. Not every guy's into sports and engines, and not every girl's into makeup and fashion, and that's okay. This is just a message saying, don't despise femininity or see it as a weakness or something to be shed, something to be ashamed of. It's not. It's God designed, it's good, and it's needed in this world. Intersectional feminism is teaching you that you need to be strong like men, independent, stoic, aggressive, compete with men, beat men, do things better than men. And that if you do simply want to, for example, be a wife or a mum, that's a disgrace to the sisterhood. But it's absolutely not. That's nonsense. Men and women are at their best when they work as a team, when they say, look, there's stuff to be done in this life. Your masculinity makes you naturally good at that stuff, so you do that. That makes sense. My femininity makes me naturally good at this other stuff, so I'll do this. That also makes sense. And we'll bring our strengths and interests to bear for the good of each other, to serve and to love one another out of our strengths and interests. The world doesn't need women to be men. We have enough of them already. What the world needs is women with all your unique capabilities and strengths and skills. We need your empathy, your compassion, your patience, your gentleness, relational warmth, your love, care, and diligence. We need the way you nurture, encourage, and support. We need the way you build relationships and beautify the world with who you are and the things you do and take an interest in. The world needs women, feminine women. We need them. You make the world a better place to be, and we both flourish when we embrace our God-given design and use it to serve each other. I believe it's the work of the enemy to try to vandalize what God has intended, and intersectionality tries to vandalize both sexes. It hates masculinity and tries to feminize it, and it hates femininity and tries to masculinize it. This is what feminism is doing to women. This, I believe, is vandalism. So reject it. And again, let's return to the Bible's teaching. Wives, sisters, mothers, and daughters, we love you. We're thankful for you. We're so thankful for how God designed you to be. Your femininity makes the world a better place to be. Embrace it. That's how you will flourish in this world, when you work with God's design and not against it.